Hello and welcome to the Believe Show. I am thrilled that today we have with us Jamie Shapiro, and I'm going to tell you a few words about her, but first I'll just say hi. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, it's so good to be with you.
I'm thrilled that we're doing this. I've gotten to know Jamie over this past year, and it's been super communicating and brainstorming with her on executive coaching type of topics. So it's been super, super fun. All right, let me tell you a little bit about Jamie. Jamie Shapiro is a leading authority on connecting leadership performance and well-being. So as an example, we are here at her website, which is Connected EC and the connectedec.com. And here's Jamie on her website. And she's also the best-selling author of Brilliant, Be the Leader Who Shines Brightly Without Burning Out. Super book, highly recommend this book. We'll probably be talking about some aspects of this book. So with all of this, welcome. Welcome, Jamie.
I'm so happy to be with you today.
Same here. I am going to start with something silly. So I asked, are you okay with starting with silly?
I love silly. I love joy.
So we're going to start with 3 silly questions.
Okay.
The first one is, what did you want to be?
A vet.
A vet?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely wanted to be a vet until I tried in high school. They wanted us to dissect an animal, and I was like, oh, that's a no-go. I guess I'm not going to be a vet. I can't do this. But I still, as you know, my dog is like my 3rd child, and I love animals to pieces.
That's a fun one. That's really fun. What is one of your favorite foods? And it's actually kind of fun to ask this of a nutritionist.
So well, I'm going to say something unexpected. Chocolate. I absolutely love really good quality dark chocolate. I always joke around. Some people are connoisseurs of wine and can taste the different notes in wine. I can taste the different notes in chocolate.
Nice. High school is sometimes a challenging time for people, sometimes a fun time. What is something that you learned about yourself during high school?
That is a tough one. That's not a silly, fun, joyful question. That's a big question. Something I learned about myself in high school. I am a nice girl, and that can be challenging in high school. And I just recognized that that's who I wanted to be no matter what. And I love kindness and always want to be that way. And I accepted that's who I was in high school.
So you got more in touch with who you are authentically.
Yes. And paid a little bit of the price for it, for sure. Being a nice girl in high school is always challenging.
Very cool. Thank you. So let's start with business topics. This is the Believe Show. And the first question I want to ask you is, what is it that you believe that others in your field may not agree with you about?
That well-being is the foundation to leadership performance. I think we ignore the full body so much in leadership development, and we don't talk about things like energy and nutrition and embodiment. And to me, we're one whole person, and we should be focused on everything from how you're eating, how you're moving, how you're sleeping as a foundation to how we perform at our best in leadership. And it's often ignored and not coached around very often, which I think is a miss.
How did you come to this belief?
I went through my own cycles of burnout in the corporate world, to be honest. I had moments where I was taking care of myself and really on point with food, with everything. And unfortunately, I also had cycles of complete burnout and exhaustion and sacrificing myself for business goals. And I really didn't connect the dots. And at the time, I didn't have executive coaches that were connecting the dots. So for example, I'd be traveling 5 days a week, and I was never asked things like, so how are you taking care of the stress of travel? How are you taking care of the foods that you need to get into you when you're on the road? None of those questions were asked. And so I just went through cycles where I was just so unhealthy and not taking care of myself. And I saw that really prevalent in the business world.
I thought what was interesting, you described this, your own story in your book in Brilliant. But I thought what was really interesting about that is you used to, when you were working in corporate America, you used to compete in triathlons. Is that right?
I did. Yes. I loved them.
What I thought was especially interesting is you said, look, I'm an athlete, I'm competing in triathlons, and then the stress got to you and you stopped doing the competition. But the part that I think is really interesting is you said, even as someone who's a triathlete, it was hard to get back into it after that burnout.
Yeah, I always say that a body at rest stays at rest and a body in motion stays in motion, right? We're going back to physics, ninth grade. Since we're going back to high school in this conversation anyway, I'll just bring in ninth grade physics. And I feel that is so true. And what we don't recognize is how hard that first step is. And what I see people do over and over again is make the mistake of trying to create transformation in a week, right? People try and do so much. They're like, I'm going to eat right. I'm going to move. I'm going to do this. I'm going to work out. And then we fail because our brains aren't wired for these giant changes. Our brains are really wired for one small step and then the next small step. So when you're at rest, I think sometimes we have this idea, and this was my idea, oh, I need to be a triathlete again. I need to move into, competing. And I wasn't able to take that first step because it was just so extreme in my mind. And I foundationally believe it's the small steps that really lead to big change. And so that's how I work with my clients.
And it's such a cool example of yourself that you're putting out there, because if you would think someone who's a triathlete, all right, so fine, let's say 2 months they don't work out. Let's even say 6 months they don't work out, but they know the program, they know what they need to do. They should be able to get back to it like that. And you're saying, no, like, look at the reality here.
No, and I think sometimes it's really hard when we have been really athletic in our life and we're in a period when we're not. Instead of thinking about, oh, I'm going to do that small step and then the next small step, I'm thinking about, oh, I need to get back to being a triathlete. And I go out there and I go for a run and I can't even run a mile. And then I'm going, oh, forget this. And I just get into that cycle of self-abuse, which only sends more cortisol through the body, makes me more upset. And I just get further and further down. And so I think we all have challenges, no matter what our background was, whether we were an athlete or not an athlete. Getting the body in motion again after a period where we haven't been is challenging. And I don't think we're compassionate and kind enough to ourselves in those moments.
Tell me how business leaders, how executives that you coach, how do they react when you say, hey, I will work with you on the executive coaching and all the business challenges that you have. And at the same time, we need to do this full body leadership program that affects sleep, nutrition. How do people react?
It depends. So some people, I'll tell you, there's two scenarios. Most of my business is 100% referral. So people know when they call me that I am an executive coach that is not just focused on your business and your leadership life at work. So for example, when I do a 360, which is a leadership assessment, I don't just interview people in your business world. I interview people in your personal life, including your spouse, your kids, your friends, because I'm very focused on the whole person. And when people come to me as a client, usually they're coming through a referral. And so they know I'm looking at foundational well-being and that I'm going to talk to them about food and sleep and movement and all of these things. And so it's not as much of a difficult conversation when it comes to referral, but people who call me thinking I'm just, that I'm not going to talk about those things or I'm not going to ask about that, and they come to me in some other way, it's usually a little bit of a shock for them. And they're like, whoa, 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 you're going to talk to my significant other, you're going to talk to me about the food I eat. What kind of executive coach are you, right? So it's a little bit overwhelming for some people who call me that have never heard of me or don't know what I do. And I think that's great for some people, and some people run as fast as they can away from me if I'm being honest.
Which is right? People need to find their fit.
So they need to find their person, and I am not everyone's person, and I know that.
None of us are. Well-being, by well-being, what do you mean?
I mean mind, body, heart, and spirit. So I'm not just talking about physical well-being. I'm talking about emotional well-being. I'm talking about our mental well-being. And I'm also talking about being connected to something greater than yourself, whatever that is. And learning to connect to your best self. And so whether that's through community, through family, through nature, through some religion, I just want you to find as a client how you access your best. And I believe that access point comes from being at our best, but also being connected to something greater than ourselves. And I think that's fundamental to who we are as human beings.
Yeah, so well-being is mind, body, heart, and spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of really wonderful definitions of well-being that are out there that encompass so many different points. But when I'm looking at well-being, I focus on those 4 areas and kind of slot everything underneath of there to make it not too complex.
Yeah. Jamie, what have you seen? So when people start to work with you, executives start to work with you, and you are focused on the physical in addition to the mental that they expect you to focus on, what are some ways that you've seen, for example, the physical or the spiritual or the emotional actually make an impact on their overall leadership?
I think one of the main places that I start once I've really done enough discovery about a client is I want to make sure that energy is there, right? We need so much energy, and as leaders, we have so much energy going out of us physically and emotionally because we're serving our communities, we're serving our businesses, our families. Like, we have so much energy going out. So one of the foundational places I focus is, okay, what does replenishment look like? How do we make sure that each and every day we're getting energy back in? And that's everything from movement to, food to sleep. I mean, there's so many different ways that we can get energy back in. But what I find with most leaders is they sacrifice self for others. And this quote is a famous quote, but you can't serve from an empty vessel, right? And you've probably heard, put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on others. I think in leadership, we sometimes forget that. We're constantly serving, and we're not thinking about that self-care is not selfish. We need to take care of self in order to have enough energy to serve the people that we want to serve. So that's one place that I start with, because a lot of leaders I start working with will find that they get home from work and they have nothing left. They are done. They are exhausted, whether they have young kids or a significant other. They are not getting the best of that person. They're really getting what's left over after work, and that's not fulfillment, and that's not how we nourish our relationships and our heart. And so I really want to rebalance that for people and think through, like, how do you get energy back in all day so that you can not only perform your best at work, but you can also perform your best at home.
Yeah, that recovery, just getting back to that energy that you were talking about. Yep. So if I were to draw a conclusion, it might be that at the end of working with you, an executive would likely be spending less time at work and maybe more time at home. Is that accurate or not consistent?
No, I really don't think about work-life balance in terms of time. I think that is really, really hard because the demands at the executive level, when we start thinking about work-life balance in terms of time, it can really actually stress us out more than less. I think about work-life balance in terms of the renewable resource of energy. So my hope for the leaders I work with and when we're finished is that they know how to recover, they know how to replenish, and that it's quality, not quantity, right? I'm not focused on, did you get an hour where you're completely distracted with your phone and work and everything going on and barely could hear your children? Or did you have that time where you actually were present and engaged and energetically aligned with your kids, right? They're totally different conversations. One is based on time and one is based on energy. So I kind of throw away the time piece when it comes to work-life balance, and I really think about the energy piece more than anything else.
What's something that's been surprising to you, whether positive surprise or negative surprise, in terms of how executives that you work with take in this full-body leadership?
I would say I've been doing this for almost a decade now, and when I first started, I thought maybe I had 3 heads because people looked at me like I was really out of my mind, combining these worlds of leadership and well-being. Like, people are you a health coach? Are you a leadership coach? Like, what are you, Jamie? And when I said yes, that never really landed. So what I've seen is the biggest surprise for me is the transformation of corporate America, especially over, I would say, the last 10 years. I have really seen a shift away from focusing exclusively on profits of the organization to a shift of really focusing on people and recognizing that people are the access to profit. And when it comes to leadership, I think we have this mentality of churn and burn, even though we didn't mean to in corporate America, where we just exhausted our leaders. And I'm not saying that's not still going on, but I think there's more awareness and connecting the dots between leadership and well-being, and how we need to think about leadership differently, and how we need to think about sustaining and helping our leaders be at their best versus, these short stints that I saw in my leadership career where people were going into cycles of burnout constantly. I think there's more awareness there.
So you've been surprised by the fact that people are overall focused more on people now.
I am. I'm grateful. I've seen the rise of the chief people officer, the CHRO role, and I realize we still have some hurdles to get through there, but I am so happy to see that people strategy is being elevated to the level it should be. And I want to continue seeing that. I really think we've transformationally, we just have a different mindset now. And I'm not saying every business. So if you're watching and listening to this, it's not every business, but I am seeing a lot of organizations start to make that shift.
You've said that the way to work with you is you would need probably a year to make these kinds of changes. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So what are some things, what are some silly situations that executives get into when they're trying to make these changes and they're actually on board with everything you're suggesting, but the nutrition things just are a little funny for them, or the movement or the sleep? Like, what kind of things have you seen executives almost get into a silly or funny situation and as they're actually trying to do this?
Well, I think behavioral change is hard. And one of the things that I ask my clients to do is be a little bit more playful with themselves. Because what happens is we just get so self-critical. We try and make a change. We can't make it right away. And instead of going, oh, okay, I got to try a different thing, or let's do this, we get really self-abusive. And that only takes us into a deeper, more negative place. So I think sometimes it's hard to plan ahead. And I know most of us aren't traveling right now, but when my clients were traveling, they would be on board and I've got this, I'm doing great. And then they'd leave the house and they would not have any snacks packed. And they'd get to an airport where there was nothing they could eat that was healthy for them. And those are some of those moments where you're like, I don't know what to do. And I have been in those, I used to travel all the time. And I'd get into a new city and go, okay, where's my food? Where's my snacks? And I couldn't find a single thing. And so I think there's just these moments where you're not thoughtful ahead of time and you land in a situation that's not serving your well-being. And instead of getting, I shouldn't have, or it's like, just laugh it off, be playful. I always talk about kids when they're learning to walk, they fall down, they get back up. They don't fall down and go, I'm never going to learn how to do this, right?
Sometimes they even fall down and they laugh. They're like, haha, this is funny.
This is hilarious. I'm learning to walk, right? So I don't think we give ourselves that grace nearly enough. And I think we need to act a little more like kids learning to walk as we're learning to be on the journey of well-being. And it's not a destination. I think that's one misnomer around well-being. And something people always assume with me is, oh, you must have this all dialed in perfectly all the time. I'm like, no, I'm a human being. Just because I do this for a living doesn't mean I don't fall down too. We all fall down.
Yeah. Our last two questions as we do the Believe show. The first one is, what is a thought that you would like to leave our audience with?
I think a thought would be to really open up the conversation around these connection points between leadership and well-being. If you are somebody who's in leadership or coaches leaders, I just encourage you not to stay away from this topic. I've worked with a lot of coaches that don't feel comfortable coaching in this space because they might not be experts. You don't have to be an expert in this space to help your clients be on this journey. So open up the conversation. And if you are a leader and saying, ooh, maybe I should look into this, I just highly recommend you start thinking about your full body instead of just what's between your ears.
Yeah, your full body, and just everything that you've explained here today, that it leads you to questions that are helpful for you as a leader, such as how do I renew my energy if I'm thinking about my full body?
Absolutely.
And if you were to snap your fingers and almost everyone in the world were to take some action, what would you want that action to be?
Love. I mean, to me, it's just love yourself and love each other. I think that's what we need more of than anything. And I think one of the greatest accesses to well-being is self-care and self-love. And so that's one thing I would say. If we all had more of that, I think we'd all be in a much healthier place.
That is the closing comment for our show for 2020. So thank you so much, Jamie. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We will see you in 2021. Thank you, everyone.